Live on connectonair.com and remoteradioweek.org.
Connect on Air.
Remote Radio Week proposes distinct programs in English, French, Spanish and Arabic, featuring experts, examples, debates and technical tips.
Connect on Air, première plateforme dédiée à la radio et à l'audio digital.
Connectonair.com, radio and audio hub. So Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely on 5 continents. Insights and suggestions on how to keep your radio business operating through any crisis. 100% online, 4 languages. Live on connectonair.com and remote-radio-week.org.
Warm welcome to all of you watching and listening to this opening session of the UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. We're really happy to be with you for those 5 days of keynotes, discussions, expert tips, testimonies, masterclasses, and a lot of resources organized by UNESCO in partnership with WHO. Remote Radio Week is an online training program aimed at building the capacity of local radio stations to produce accurate and professional radio content in the event of containment measures or emergencies, including also financial difficulties. The goal is to support community radio stations globally. And I'm really thrilled to welcome to this opening session of the Remote Radio Week 2021 someone who is concretely supporting and networking with community radio stations around the world. Professor Vinod Pavarala, UNESCO Chair of Community Media. Hello, Professor. How are you?
Thank you, Philip. Nice to be here. I'm doing well. Yeah.
First of all, Vinod, can you tell us shortly about yourself and your work at the head of the UNESCO Chair of Community Radio?
Yes. Thanks, Philip. Like you said, I'm the chairholder of something called the UNESCO Chair on Community Media. This was set up at University of Hyderabad in India, where I work, in 2011. So this is about 10 years old. And the chair's work involves considerable amount of research and documentation, but also we do a fair amount of capacity building with communities, mostly in community radio, but also sometimes in community video. We also engage in network building with stations and associations of stations. We do a fair degree of policy advocacy with governments and other stakeholders involved in community radio. So this is work that me and my colleagues have been doing at University of Hyderabad for nearly 20 years. And it's been about 10 years since UNESCO Paris thought it fit to set up this chair at University of Hyderabad.
So at the height of the pandemic, you conducted a series of 11 global dialogues on community media in the post-pandemic world over, I think it's a 6 months period. From those dialogues developed in 9 different regions of the world, and it was really everywhere. I mean, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, UK and Ireland, continental Europe, East and Southern Africa, West and Central Africa, North America, and even Latin America. And I saw 11 of videos of 2 hours with really many interesting examples, concrete examples on how radio station managed to face this pandemic. What were the most pressing challenges faced to community radios by community radio? According to you, what was it?
Yes, Philip. I mean, the global dialogues that we conducted on what we called community media in the post-pandemic world was in fact quite a major effort, at a time when community radio stations were struggling to operate on the ground. Many of them short of funding. A lot of funding was either withheld or held back. So we thought of organizing these online dialogues regionally across the world, like you mentioned, 11 dialogues involving something like 75 panelists, which included activists, community radio practitioners, policy advocates, academics from across the board, and with an audience, subsequently, I think it was on YouTube. We estimate something like 40 to 50,000 people would have accessed these global dialogues now. We are still going through the transcripts, trying to get a sense of what has come out. But I can tell you, Philip, immediately, overall, one comes away from these dialogues very optimistic about the potential of community media generally, and especially in times of crisis like the global pandemic that we have witnessed. Over the last 40, 50 years, we have evidence of community radios on the ground playing a vital role in the in times of natural disasters like earthquakes and cyclones, hurricanes across the world. I mean, there is enormous amount of evidence in favor of that. And then this pandemic happened, and unlike any other natural disasters that we have ever seen before, I mean, something that is contagious and that involves as mitigating actions some things that are completely antithetical to the principle of community radio. For example, take this whole thing about social distancing. I mean, social distancing and community radio are completely opposite to each other. Community radios are about proximity to the community. Community radios are about practitioners mingling with the community, going there physically, participating in their activities, recording their voices, having them come to the studio and record things and so on, right? So that's a key principle that was completely negated. Participation is central to community radio. So that was the first major challenge. This whole thing about remote radio week that you are organizing, I mean, remoteness is so much the opposite of what community radio should be. However, we have learned from region to region how well stations have adapted, how well stations have fought back the challenges. For example, the lockdowns across the world. In some places, these lockdowns were implemented really harshly with the backing of coercive measures from the police, from armed forces. So it was impossible to move around the streets to visit the stations, right? And those who could visit the stations, some of these people required public transport. There were no public transport to visit. Women especially struggled really hard to travel long distances to their stations to operate them, right? So they were very inventive. One or two people did manage to go to their stations to keep the transmitters running. The community radio reporters and others learned to work from the field. They were already recording on their mobile phones and so on. And to be able to upload short audios to their studio for broadcast was another challenge, but they met that challenge.
Yeah, they found some solutions. I saw in the videos they just managed to send from a point to other via mobile phone with a pay by Orange, and it was really fine solutions.
And Philip, I mean, community media are meant for the deprived communities, marginalized communities who do not have a voice in mainstream media, and the practitioners themselves come from relatively deprived backgrounds. They struggle for funding. Their phones do not have that kind of data availability. It costs a lot. to be able to upload, download, and all of that. But they struggled and they managed, doing short audios, trying to find public Wi-Fi where possible, yeah, and also learning how to edit their audios on their mobile phones. Previously, they were sitting in their offices trying to do it on their computers. Now they had to learn quickly on their feet. So this was an amazing effort. And on top of it, in terms of content, Philip, the whole world was battling, what the UN and other agencies have called the infodemic. In terms of factual accuracy of information, a lot of misinformation, disinformation floating around. So many of us and other, capacity building agencies had to quickly organize awareness workshops, capacity building workshops to teach communities to detect fake news, how to go for authentic information, learn to look at the WHO website, their government websites to extract more valid information and to translate it into local languages and broadcast. And a lot of agencies were involved. For example, AMARC, the World Association of Community Radio Broadcasters, played a big role in different regions in building capacities of community radios. But there are several other agencies like in India, in South Asia, but in Latin America. Many of those agencies stepped in to build the capacity, and it's an ongoing process. I wouldn't say all stations have their capacities built now.
No, and this is what we're going to try to talk about for 5 days. Thanks to you, thanks to all the work you've been putting up. You're also conducting 2 online capacity building workshops for community radio station in Bangladesh. We're going to talk about it with Professor Vasuki Belavadi on the 5th day, Friday. So you can connect on Friday, 5th of November for this really interesting. And then among the resource developed by your chair, there's a lot of a lot of resources that are existing. I know there's a community radio continuous improvement toolkit called CIT toolkit that is available. But to finish with this first start of the week, can you tell us what is the resource today that a radio station, a community radio station, can use to help the station work maybe more efficiently?
I mean, I'm hoping, Philip, that as the pandemic situation is improving, many stations are beginning to return to some routines, which they are used to, going back to the stations, going to the communities to be supportive physically. But many of them have used the opportunity provided by the pandemic to build new skills. For example, to leverage social media more effectively, to promote their programs, to link their programs in Facebook, on WhatsApp, to disseminate it more effectively to their audiences. Many of them have learned that. Of course, the digital divide is still very real in many parts of the world. I mean, we have talked to people in Eastern and Southern Africa and Western Africa. Parts of South Asia are still struggling to bridge the digital divide. So it's not so easy to use internet-based technologies. But where they are available, I'm very happy to say that they have learned to use these publicly available resources to their advantage. And I think this is a process that will continue. And I think your own workshop will, I'm sure, add to that.
What is sure is that we will also rebroadcast and promote those dialogues that you had with all those great radio people that give a lot of examples of how they managed and how they're still going on to manage. And that will certainly give a lot of ideas to others radio stations. This was really wonderful to have you, Professor Vinod Pavarala, UNESCO Chair on Community Media, for this opening session. Please stay connected on our website for the following sessions live in 4 languages all day. You can also access to those videos in replay immediately after the live. Of course, if you liked this session, please feel free to share it around to your colleagues and or radio-friendly contacts you may have. we stay together on remote-radio-week.org. Thank you for now. Bye, Vinod.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely on 5 continents.
Connectonaire.
UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Live on connectonair.com and Remote Radio Week